1/3 of all murder cases in America remain open.
He had told me that if I opened my eyes, he would slit my throat.
Each one is called a cold case.
The DNA evidence taken from the victim was a match. The Linden rapist was at it again.
Based on the hit A&E television program.
A phone call is placed, one that changes a family's life forever.
Cold Case Files, the podcast.
You could see the fire in his eyes. He screamed at me, "You want it? Get your tape recorder out."
Get new episodes of Cold Case Files every Tuesday on Podcast One, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 275 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on with you?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well.
Yeah.
So we got a couple of guys here who are doing good, hopefully about ready to put out a banger of an episode.
A banger.
A banger.
Yeah.
As they would say in the YouTube world. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos lately.
Have you?
So I might have picked up some vernacular.
I like that.
From those individuals.
Vernacular.
Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Tyler Williams.
Hey, Tyler.
Lisa Young.
What's going on, Young?
Patricia Cook.
Hey, Patricia.
Latasha Crawford.
Hey, thanks, Crawford.
Julianne Barasa.
Well, thank you, Julian.
Leslie Roberts jumped out at our highest level.
What's going on?
Jesus Diaz.
Hey, Diaz.
Trisha Pucci. Pucci.
Okay.
Nancy Jones.
Thank you.
Kendra jumped out at our highest level.
Man, that's awesome.
Melinda McCoy.
Hey, Melinda.
Corey Anna.
Coriana.
Mm-hmm.
See?
Rosie Canham.
Hey, Rosie.
Candace Drawn.
What's going on, Drawn?
Darlene Keith.
Hey, Darlene.
Colby Smith.
What's going on, Smith?
Bree LaForce Fryer.
That's awesome, Bree. Thank you.
Leslie Ramirez.
Hey, Leslie.
Pat Schaefer.
What's up, Pat?
Jana Mackley.
Hey, good old Jana.
Lisa Kemp.
Hi, Lisa.
Cynthia Terrio jumped out at our highest level.
Well, appreciate that, Cynthia.
And last but not least, Mary Reese.
Hey, Mary.
And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Patty Aussie James.
Hey, awesome, Patty.
So I think we know where Patty is from.
Where do you think that is?
Down under.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see. I was thinking Irish.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that makes sense. We also had some great PayPal donations from Kelly Gardner.
Hey, Kelly.
Georgie Yakubenko.
Hey, Yakubenjo.
And Wayne Ashante.
What's going on, Ashante?
So we appreciate all the support we get. It helps a lot. Gibbs, right now on TCAT, we have part 2 and the last part out on our series on Mary Keenan O'Connor.
Such a good case.
It is. I never thought it would be 2 parts, but so much information and some really strange information relating to this case. So if you haven't checked it out, make sure you do. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I'm ready.
We're talking about the death of Charles C. Morgan. In June 1977, Charles Morgan died from a gunshot wound to the head. He had been missing for 11 days. 2 months later, his death was declared a suicide. But some odd crime scene details, cryptic messages, and a fraud case led many to speculate that Charles was murdered because of his role in an elaborate financial scheme.
I know how you love cryptic messages.
I do.
I leave them around here for you all the time.
Yeah, cryptic is a strange word to describe your messages. Unintelligible, undecipherable, maybe. But let's go with cryptic.
But I know what they say.
You do. Charles C. Morgan was a 39-year-old escrow agent from Tucson, Arizona. He was considered a family man. Charles and his wife, Ruth, were married for 19 years, and they had 4 daughters. Charles Morgan studied business and real estate at the University of Arizona. Charles was featured on the Business Briefs page of a June 5th, 1977 Arizona Daily Star newspaper.
It's always cool when you're featured in a newspaper article.
Is it? Because we do a lot of research from newspaper articles, and what the people are said to have done is not cool.
There always is the
Exception?
Yeah.
To the rule?
To the rule.
Okay. I got you. I mean, I think when you're talking about Charles, that's good, right? You're in the business world. You're featured in a business section of a newspaper. Yeah. I'm assuming it was good, right?
That's something you would clip out and hang on the wall.
Oh, absolutely. The description listed his work history. Charles was the division manager for West Point Pepperell, a textile manufacturer in New York. He was elected president of Statewide Escrow Service Incorporated. He had worked in escrow in Tucson for 15 years and with Western Title Insurance before moving to Statewide. This kind of sounds like background information that nobody needs, but this is information that would become important during the investigation into his death. So Charles was a busy guy. He was dedicated to work. We said he was a father of 4, and he was a Mason. And it was said in a lot of different reports that he was dedicated to his Masonic lodge. He also volunteered to work with youth activities sponsored by the association, but he had asthma and he wasn't always in the best of health. According to the Tucson Citizen, Charles's business associates thought he was a brilliant businessman and a good source of sound advice. But apparently his devotion to work could be too intense for people who weren't as passionate about their jobs.
And we all know somebody like that.
We know a number of people like that. I can say truthfully, I was never one of those people. I did my job. I liked my job.
Yeah.
But it didn't define me. It wasn't who I really was at my core. It was a way for me to earn a living, to support my family.
Yeah.
It was never the end all be all for me.
And I think you can confirm as one of my previous managers that I was not that way either.
No, and I assume you still aren't. I'll go on a limb and say that. But it doesn't mean that you can't be good at your job and leave it behind at a certain time. Now, there are some people, and we know some people, who never leave it. They're up till 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night.
Sure.
Still going through emails, and they're just really into their job. And that's not a bad thing either.
No.
Unless it becomes too much. Because one associate told the Tucson Citizen that Charles pushed himself until he had a nervous breakdown about once a year. And then he had to take a week off. Okay, to me, that's too much. You're pushing too hard.
You should take a week off because you want to take it off for enjoyment and do something fun, not because you have to. Otherwise, you're going to have a breakdown.
Yeah. Or he already had one and had to recover from it during that week off. Another person said that Charles was probably one of the most knowledgeable escrow agents in the state. There was not enough time in the day for him to handle all the people who wanted his services. Okay. That's not a bad problem to have.
No.
There might be a correlation there as well. This guy worked hard. He worked a lot. He was good.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are the kind of people you want. Now, is it good for him? Maybe not. Doesn't sound like it was at certain times.
Well, if you're burning the candle at both ends, then no.
Another associate said that he sometimes lacked the ability to communicate with potential clients because he couldn't relax. He was all business. He would be completely out of it if you started to talk about football or really anything that didn't have something to do with business.
Again, we know somebody like that,
Yeah, we know people like that. One friend told the Tucson Citizen that Charles was insecure and needed approval from others. He sometimes created crises so that he could solve them.
Well, that's one way to look important to people. If you create the problem and have the solution for the problem, you're probably going to look like a genius.
Well, as long as nobody knows that you actually created the problem in the first place. If you just come along and solve the problem, yeah, you're a hero.
Sure.
You'll climb the ladder. It was also said that although he was very business savvy, he always seemed to be in financial trouble.
That always bugged me about people that knew all the right answers, but when you pulled the curtain back, they didn't walk the talk. They didn't.
I don't think that's how the saying goes at all. I think you can talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? Exactly. I think is how some version of that saying goes. I don't think walk the talk is a saying in any universe, multiverse.
I was just trying to shorten that down.
Okay.
Know?
But I think I do get what you're saying. I have known some people throughout my life who were very successful in business or whatever field they were in. They made good money.
Yeah.
But they never seemed to have any money. And they were always in financial trouble. And to me, I just always thought, well, they must be bad at managing money.
Yeah, they're good at making it, but not good at keeping it.
Charles's attorney, Ronald Newman, reported that Charles had what he called an unusual interest in organized crime. He spoke about reading newspaper articles on recent organized crime in Arizona. Charles said that the series, which was about land fraud, didn't go far enough into the activities of gangs in Arizona. Newman apparently didn't ask for more details, but Charles told him the reporters were writing about past criminal activity and didn't get information on current crimes.
Well, he is into escrow, real estate, so maybe this land fraud sparked an interest in him.
Or maybe he knew more than the average person because of his line of work. But it was said that Charles rarely spoke about his family with business associates, and he never gave out his home phone number.
I'm not surprised by that because I think for the longest time, you weren't even sure if I was married back in the day when I was married. Did I have kids? I was a mystery.
Well, you are to some extent. You don't like to put your personal life out.
Right.
Maybe as much as I am. I'm a little freer with that. Some people have said I'm too free.
Yeah.
In what I've talked about or disclosed. And that just comes to, I guess, to personal preference. It was also said, though, that his family didn't know much about his work. A fellow Mason told the Tucson Citizen that Charles was not that open, but not secretive enough to the point of being a mystery. Man, that describes you to a T.
Walking that fine line?
Yeah. You're not always super open, but in no way, to me, are you a mystery. Except for the Jason Bourne stuff. That is somewhat mysterious.
It is. It really is.
In 1977, Charles went missing not once, but twice. Okay. Pretty strange to go missing once in a year.
Right.
Very strange to go missing twice in a year. But Charles allegedly worked for members of organized crime families. And you know who is more apt to go missing? People who work for and or with the mob or organized crime.
You're definitely opening that window up for that opportunity.
Yeah, I think your chances go up exponentially. In the 1970s, Arizona became a pipeline for drugs and a hotspot for organized crime because of a state law that allowed anyone to buy land using numbered blind trust accounts. So essentially what it did is it made money laundering very easy. Unsolved Mysteries reported that Charles Morgan did real estate escrow work for at least one mafia family and may have helped them purchase gold bullion and platinum, which was an easy way to launder money. Journalist Don Devereaux investigated the Charles Morgan case. Devereaux told Unsolved Mysteries he was around the edges of a couple of very large organized crime groups in Arizona at that time. It was very easy to get in over your head. And I suspect that Mr. Morgan was in that kind of situation over the years. He was perhaps doing upwards of $1 billion of escrow work in bullion and platinum. These were transactions that only existed on paper. He was a straight businessman that probably got a little too close to the flame.
Well, you're talking billions of dollars in the 70s, late 70s. That's a big number anytime, but in the 70s?
I was going to say $1 billion is a big time anytime.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I'm still sore that I didn't win that $1.3 billion lottery or whatever it was.
Yeah, me too. I hadn't even looked at my tickets. I know I'm not the big winner.
Because you didn't buy it in Illinois?
Because I didn't buy it in Illinois. I would have bought it in Illinois.
That's why you didn't win. See, if you would have bought it in Illinois, you could have won. But you went over to Illinois and you lost.
That's where I made my mistake.
On March 22nd, 1977, Charles left for work, but he didn't come home until the early morning hours of March 25th. His wife, Ruth, was woken up by a thumping sound at the back of the door. Okay, I get it. You might go out, hang out at night, come home late.
Sure.
People have done that all the time, but 3 days and you don't come home? I better find a new place to live because my wife has all my stuff sitting out on the front lawn.
Yeah.
She's got, she's had a locksmith come over, change the locks. Ruth told Unsolved Mysteries. I was in bed and the dog started barking. I got up, went to the door and opened it, and there was Charles. He was missing a shoe and had one plastic handcuff around one ankle and a set around his hands. When he motioned to his throat and didn't say a word, I asked him, "Can you talk? Can you write?" He shook his head, yes. So I went and got paper and a pen. He wrote that his throat had been painted with a hallucinogenic drug and that the drug could drive him irrevocably insane or destroy his nervous system and kill him. I wanted to call a doctor and the police, but he was adamant that that would be signing a death warrant for the entire family.
So this really happened, or this is a lot of drama?
And if it really happened, I'm trying to picture Ruth.
Yeah.
First of all, where you been for 3 days? What's with the zip ties? And what's going on with this hallucinogenic drug? And now we're all painted, marked for death.
But we can't call anybody or do anything about it.
No.
Yeah. I remember a time I worked with a guy in the construction field, and he wanted to get his wife's attention. So he went to one of the homes at night and decided to beat himself up. Then he tied himself up and got into his trunk of his car and shut the lid and wasn't found until the next day. Almost died because he thought someone would come look for him. He thought his wife would come look for him, but she didn't care.
She didn't care.
But then he had to explain to the police, why did he beat himself up? He started blaming it on somebody, but they could tell real quickly that he did this to himself.
Yeah. You know what that points out is you should align yourself with different people.
What?
I don't know who you're hanging around with back then.
Yeah.
But you're kind of telling on your own character there of who you're hanging around with. So after this event, Charles wrote about strange things and suggested he had a fake identity as a secret government agent. According to Ruth, he wrote, "They took my treasury identification. That was the first I'd heard of it. Then he told me he had been working for them for about 2 or 3 years. And that was it." She told Unsolved Mysteries that she knew almost nothing about her husband's business involvements. She said, "Chuck mentioned to me once that there was money laundering going on, but nothing that he was involved in. He told me, the less the girls and you know, the better off you will be." Okay, well, if he's not involved, then why be so secretive? I don't know. That kind of jumped out at me as those two statements not really aligning with each other. It was said that Charles became paranoid after being kidnapped. I think anyone would. He started wearing a bulletproof vest. He insisted that his daughters be driven to and from school and would not allow them to play outside. He became fearful that his enemies would target his children. 2 months later, Charles disappeared again. On June 18th, 1977, Charles was reported missing in the local papers. Now, he was last seen on June 7th, so this was like 11 days later. Ruth said she saw him at 7 a.m. When she left the house to take one of her daughters to school, Charles was seen again at 12:40 p.m. at an address on North Craycroft Road. Later that afternoon, he made his last call. Charles called his office from a downtown payphone and promised to be back in 30 minutes. And then no one heard from him. Oh, the days of having to find a payphone when you were out if you wanted to call someone.
Yeah.
It seems so foreign now.
And my luck was when I got to that payphone, someone cut the wire already.
Oh, yeah, because half of them didn't work.
Right.
Between the time of his disappearance and the discovery of his body, it was determined that Charles registered for a motel, which really was his last confirmed activity. Police believed that there was some type of foul play involved because Charles had no known reason to go missing. Then on June 16th, Ruth Morgan received a bizarre phone call. An unfamiliar woman's voice spoke on the phone. Ruth told Unsolved Mysteries. This woman said, "Ruthie." I said, "Yes." She said, "Charles is all right. Ecclesiastes 12, 1 through 8. And then she hung up. Okay. If I'm getting that call, first of all, I'm stupefied because I don't know what's going on. And I think the second thing I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out what is in Ecclesiastes 12, 1 through 8.
That would give me any clue about my missing spouse.
And it's a lengthy passage, so I'm not going to read the entire thing. It would take too long. But there is one part towards the end that I want to read that says, "Then people go to their eternal home, and mourners go about the streets. Remember him before the silver cord is severed, and the golden bowl is broken, before the pitcher is shattered at the spring, and the wheel broken at the well. And the dust returns to the ground it came from, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Everything is meaningless." So I don't claim to be a theologian.
Neither do I.
It's a good thing, because I know you're not. And I'm not great at interpreting everything. But the gist of this, what I take from it, is that he's dead.
Yeah.
You know, when you start to hear things about, you know, the dust returns to the ground it came from, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Okay. I'm not taking from that Charles is on a beach somewhere sipping pina coladas. It sounds pretty ominous. And it turned out to be. Charles Morgan's body was found on June 18th, 1977. Charles was found lying near his new car, a Mercury Cougar, about 40 miles west of Tucson. He was found alongside Arizona 86 in the San Juan Springs area on the Papago Reservation. Two passerbys found him at 8 a.m., about 30 feet from the highway. Police said that Charles had been dead for less than 48 hours. When he was found, Charles was wearing a bulletproof vest. He had a knife and a holster. Charles was shot in the back of the head with his own .357 caliber Magnum revolver. It was determined that the bullet was fired at close range. The gun was found lying next to his body, and there were no fingerprints found on the gun. There was also no sign of a struggle around where his body was found. True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Most of you listening right now are probably multitasking. Yep, while you're listening to Gibby and I talk, you're probably also driving, cleaning, exercising, or maybe even grocery shopping. But if you're not in some kind of moving vehicle, there's something else that you can be doing right now. Getting an auto quote from Progressive Insurance. It's easy, and you could save money by doing it right from your phone. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save over $700 on average. And auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Discounts for having multiple vehicles on your policy, being a homeowner, and more. So just like your favorite podcast, Progressive will be with you 24/7, 365 days a year, so you're protected no matter what. Multitask right now. Quote your car insurance at Progressive.com to join the over 27 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2020 and May 2021. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations. Gibby, you know I love that sound. That's the sound of another sale on Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. Shopify gives entrepreneurs the resources once reserved for big business, so upstarts, startups, and established businesses alike can sell everywhere, synchronize online and in-person sales, and effortlessly stay informed. Scaling your business is a journey of endless possibility. We started using Shopify about 4 years ago to sell podcast merchandise, and it's been a game changer. Like mine, Shopify powers millions of businesses from first sale to first scale. Reach customers online and across social networks with an ever-growing suite of channel integrations and apps. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and more. Synchronize your online and in-person sales. Gain insights as you grow with detailed reporting of conversion rates, rates, profit margins, and beyond. It's more than a store. Shopify grows with you. This is Possibility powered by Shopify. Go to shopify.com/unsolved, all lowercase, for a free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/unsolved right now. Shopify.com/unsolved. You know, a few nights ago, it was a pretty normal night. My family and I ate dinner together. We had our chat session as we normally do, and then all of a sudden I disappeared. Well, the family thinks that I'm going down to research for the podcast, but what I really did was went to the basement so that I could play some Best Fiends. I love Best Fiends. It's the perfect getaway game for me. Little downtime from all the writing and research. You know, Best Fiends is a game that's easy to pick up and play a few levels anytime. Best Fiends is a free-to-download mobile puzzle game. It has thousands of exciting levels for new adventures and challenges. I love the dozens of unique fiends that you can collect, and the fact that you can customize your team of fiends to defeat the menacing slugs. Best Fiends has offline play, so you'll never be stranded without fun, even if you lose your internet connection. And there's always new events and challenges coming out year-round. I've made it past level 350, so that probably tells you a little bit about how much I play. Download your new favorite getaway, Best Fiends, for free today on the App Store or Google Play. You'll even get $5 worth of in-game rewards when you reach level 5. That's friends without the R, Best Fiends. Inside the Cougar, the Pima County Sheriff's investigators found multiple sets of plastic handcuffs in the trunk, as well as ammunition, rifles and handguns, a knife, a camouflage suit, a police monitor, 2 CB radios, and probably most disturbingly, one of Charles's teeth wrapped up in a handkerchief.
So bizarre.
So bizarre. So bizarre. It is on a number of different levels. Now, obviously, we're going to talk about it as we go through this episode. Exactly how did he die? Did he shoot himself? Was he shot by someone else? But take an inventory of what's found in his car.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff here.
And his new car has been modified too, so that he could unlock it from the fender. That's like secret agent stuff.
I'm trying to figure out how you even modify it for it to work that way.
Yeah.
But who needs a camouflage suit, a police monitor, 2 CB radios, handguns, rifles, all this ammunition? And then why is your tooth wrapped up in a handkerchief? I mean, this is like The Hangover.
Yeah.
How did he lose this tooth? So obviously police are going to find some of this stuff strange. One being the number of weapons that Charles had with him. Now, Charles was on the University of Arizona rifle team, but it was said that he never carried a gun. 6 guns in total were found in his car. Some were covered by towels in the back seat. A pistol was found near his body with 1 round fired. But there were indications that possibly he was target shooting before his death because empty cartridges were found in his pocket.
Well, that's a good sign of that, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, most people don't carry around spent casings just in their pocket for good luck.
Yeah.
There's got to be a reason why they're in there. After looking closely at Charles, the police found a $2 bill pinned to his underwear. The bill had several Spanish last names on it and a map of the surrounding area. The last name started with letters A through G. Above the names was the note Ecclesiastes 12, with verses 1 through 8 marked by arrows drawn on the bill's serial number. On the back of the bill, the signers of the Declaration of Independence were numbered 1 through 7. Ruth Morgan later identified the writing on the bill as belonging to Charles.
So now we're getting into the cryptic messages and that the fact that it was pinned to his underwear.
And it's a $2 bill.
Yeah.
Which I found the strangest of all bills. But, you know, when I read through all this, I thought, man, that's a lot to have on a bill. Bill's not that big. There's a lot of stuff going on being written on this one bill. We got a map of the area. And then on a piece of paper, Charles had drawn a rough map leading to an area between Tucson and Mexico to Robles Junction and Salicita, both known smuggling areas. The police also found a pair of sunglasses that did not belong to Charles. I mean, it's just mystery after mystery.
It really is.
That's probably why they aired it on Unsolved Mysteries, because there's so many mysteries.
I think you're right.
A few hours after Charles was found, a man named Charles R. Morgan called the police to investigate the theft of guns from his car. He wanted to know if the guns were used to kill someone, but refused to give out further details. In his call, he only gave his name as Charles Morgan. So, the police were really confused about his true identity for a while. They had just found a dead man named Charles Morgan. Now, Charles Morgan is calling them, wanting to know about guns.
Where are my guns at?
And were they used to kill anyone? The next day, the papers announced that this lead had fizzled out. Charles R. Morgan, it turned out, had no connections to Charles C. Morgan.
But how strange is that?
I get if somebody stole your guns, you would call the police, right?
Right.
You'd want them to investigate. But it does seem very odd to me to ask the question whether or not your guns were used to kill someone.
And to have the same first and last name, it's really strange.
Authorities learned that Charles Morgan purchased his bulletproof vest and 2 .357 Magnum revolvers from Ford's firearms company. Thomas Ford, spokesman for the store, said that when Charles came into the store, he looked at a .357 revolver. He purchased the gun in late February and said it was for a family member. In March, he bought another .357 Magnum. While he was there, Charles saw a police officer trying on a bulletproof vest. He said he wanted one because as an escrow agent, he often carried a lot of money with him.
Well, back then he was doing $1 billion in deals. And unlike today, it probably was a pretty big cash business, right? That he had to transfer from one location to another, unlike doing wires today.
On June 20th, 1977, an unidentified woman contacted the police and spoke with Chief Deputy Clarence Dupnick. The woman called the Tucson Citizen earlier that day, and the paper arranged the phone call. She called herself Green Eyes and claimed she was the person who called Ruth. And she quoted that passage from Ecclesiastes 12. She refused to meet in person because she feared for her life. According to the Arizona Daily Star, this woman claimed that Charles was hiding out at a motel trying to buy off a contract on his life. So there was reportedly a $90,000 contract on his life, which increased by $5,000 every day.
That's a big contract, especially back then.
Well, that's a big contract. And you think about $5,000 additional every day.
Yeah.
You would want to try to buy that off quickly. I don't know how you buy off a contract on your life. So you're going to pay the hitman or the person that took out the contract on you? Because if you pay off the hitman, wouldn't they just turn around and offer the contract to someone else?
You would think.
So I'm a little confused about that.
Well, somehow you give them proof of the hit.
Or are you talking about the fake photograph where you're lying down with ketchup on your face or something?
Yeah.
The contract was said to be retaliation for testimony that Charles gave before the U.S. judiciary in Washington, D.C. Charles had apparently raised $60,000 in cash before his death. He allegedly told this woman, if they accept this, then everything will be all right. But he didn't give her names or the reason why someone wanted him dead. And why is he talking to this woman and telling her all this?
Yeah.
All these questions are just floating around in my mind.
Why is she so important to him?
Because the facts, or at least the allegations or the things being said in this case, are just so strange. According to the Tucson Citizen, the woman claimed that she met Charles a month before his death and had been seeing him socially from time to time. She claimed she had visited Charles at the Easy 8 Motel 4 times over the past 2 weeks. He showed her stacks of cash in his briefcase. Investigators confirmed Morgan was staying at that particular motel. A briefcase was found in his car, but he didn't have any money, just business papers.
Well, maybe he was showing her cash from some transactions that he completed for the escrow business.
and trying to pass it off as though it was his, and maybe, puffing himself up a little bit, making himself look like a big shot. Possibly. Yeah. She said that her last meeting with Charles took place on June 15th. She spoke on the phone with him at noon on the 16th. He asked her to call his wife because she hadn't heard from him since he went missing on the 7th. So this woman called his house at 6:30 p.m. that day. And obviously we already talked about what she said to Ruth. Chief Deputy Dupnick believed the woman was telling the truth.
So the problem I have with this, why didn't he just call his wife?
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Why ask this woman to call when you can pick up a payphone and make the call? And did he tell her what to say?
Yeah, that's true.
Because why did she, go into this lengthy thing about a certain section of the Bible? Was that on his instructions?
Or does she do that on her own?
I don't know. Rumors began to circulate that an organized crime group hired a hitman to kill Charles. According to this theory, the hitman then informed Charles about the contract, and Charles found money to pay him off. But when they met for the payout, the hitman killed Charles and stole the money.
That would just be a very smart hitman.
This has got a real No Country for Old Men vibe going on with it. You've got a bunch of hitmen running around. Again, my same question applies. What happens when you pay this hitman off? Does he just tell the people that you're dead and you go away and they think you're dead? Because that could be the only thing I'm thinking.
Because I'm thinking when you think about ethics, probably hitmen don't have the highest level of ethics.
You think?
I think they're like, okay, looks like I got some free money here, and then I'm going to kill you and get the rest of the money.
So you're telling me that a person that is willing to kill for money probably is not that ethical? That's gold, Jerry. Gold.
Yeah. But don't take a contract out on me because I said that.
No, I would never. So it was true that Charles had recently testified in a secret state investigation. He had also told people he was working undercover for the Treasury Department. In May 1977, Charles Morgan was a witness in a secret state investigation about illegal business activities in Tucson. He gave a sworn deposition under subpoena. The state attorney general offered him physical protection, but he declined. The Tucson Citizen reported that sources told them that Charles's testimony concerned Banco Internacional de Arizona. The bank had given him a personal loan of $30,000. Two of Charles's business associates said that he told them officials from the state banking department informed him they would prevent him from acquiring a majority interest in statewide escrow service unless he cooperated with them. So apparently Charles was seeking to take over the company.
Sure.
It was thought that Charles wouldn't testify against the bank because he was somewhat friendly with them. They had given him $30,000.
Yeah.
It was later discovered that the personal loan was not used for his personal debts. A close business associate told the Tucson Citizen that the loan was used to buy a majority interest in statewide escrow service. The collateral for this loan was a third mortgage on Charles's house in shares of stock in the company. Man, a third mortgage.
Yeah.
I don't even like the first.
You don't hear that often today, but years ago, that was something that was done.
Yeah, I would think as a lender, you'd be real leery about being third in line.
I would think so.
What are you getting? Nothing. The shaft, probably.
Right.
When it comes down to it. Charles oversold business stock to his partner, Whitey Davis, and Northwestern Mutual Life agent, Michael Farley. This Farley guy co-signed on a $50,000 bond that Morgan was required to post before he could get the majority interest in the company. Morgan agreed to give Michael Farley shares as payment for co-signing on the bond. He also sold a bunch of shares to Whitey Davis. Ruth Morgan told Unsolved Mysteries that after Charles died, she received a visit from two men who claimed to be FBI agents. Now, she said they opened and closed their identification very fast. Kind of a trick you see in movies, sitcoms,
right.
Things like that. They said they wanted to come in and look through the house, but they never said what they were looking for. And Ruth said on the show that to this day, I don't even know what they were looking for. The men tore her house apart looking for something, but they didn't leave with any items.
I think if that was me, at some point during their visit, I would request a lot of information. Like, hey, why are you here? What are you looking for? Do you have any paperwork?
Something. But, to be fair, I don't know that a lot of people know what they can and can't do.
That's true.
Can and can't say, what their rights are. Now, maybe more people do today because of the number of procedural shows.
Right.
And I think we're a lot more informed nowadays about, what our rights are and what cops can and can't do.
And probably back then, I'm going to assume that the FBI was more intimidating.
Yeah, I would think that's a fair statement. According to Unsolved Mysteries, investigative journalist Don Devereaux later contacted the FBI to ask for information on Morgan. He said, when I made a Freedom of Information Act request to the FBI, they said they had never heard of Mr. Morgan, despite the fact that they obviously opened an investigation, despite the fact that the FBI interviewed Mr. Morgan's attorney. They were all over this for a while. But now they've never heard of the guy. He never existed. No card, no file, no nothing. On June 22nd, the papers reported that the Pima County Sheriff's deputies believed Charles may have died of suicide. Ruth Morgan and Charles's business associates refused to believe it. There were several reasons. The police believed Charles died of suicide. The location of the body was just a few feet from the highway. So I think to them, it didn't really seem as though a killer was trying to hide the body, the crime scene. Personal papers that might have been useful to someone who killed Charles were found in his car. Now, I think, going along with that theory, police thought that the .357 found near his body was likely the gun that killed him, but the bullet recovered from Charles's head was badly damaged, too badly damaged for a ballistics test to see if it matched the gun at the crime scene. There were no fingerprints on the gun that matched Charles Morgan. And despite what the woman said about the $60,000 in cash, there was no money found in Charles's car and only about $10 found on his person. Pathologist Joseph Hulka declared on June 20th that Charles's death was a homicide, but on the 21st, he refused to comment on the case. He said that the bullet appeared to have entered the top of Charles's head. And to me, Gibbs, that is strange. We've covered a lot of cases. We have talked about a number of people who have taken their lives.
Right.
I don't know that I've ever researched a case or really heard of a case where, someone shot themselves in the top of the head. Not that it couldn't be done. It just seems like a very strange place.
You're making it awkward.
You're making it harder.
Harder, yeah.
Than it would have to be. Now, what I could say is that if someone were to execute someone, often we talk about a shot to the back of the head.
Right.
But if you had somebody down on their knees in front of you, that would be a fairly easy shot to make.
Sure.
Point the gun down on the top of their head. Just a theory or an observation, I guess.
And I'm guessing with a .357, top of the head, back of the head, it's really not going to matter.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's a fairly powerful round. Ruth told the Tucson Citizen, "There was no mystery about my husband. There can be no mystery about a man who loved his wife and family." Ruth insisted that Charles was too devoted to his family to take his life. She also said that suicide is against the Mason Creed, which is another reason to her that Charles wouldn't have taken his own life. Ruth said he would not have waited 11 days to shoot himself, but if he had, there would have been a note to me and the children.
I can see where you want to believe that, but just from other cases, we know that logic doesn't always work itself into cases like this.
Well, and it's also tough to say there can be no mystery about a man who loved his wife and family. There have been many people who have been family guys. They had a wife, they had a family, they did love them, but they were also out doing some bad stuff. Now, she's saying this, I believe, in the context of him taking his own life, because he wouldn't have done it. He just loved them too much. Ruth believed that Charles was murdered by someone who did not want him to open statewide. A business associate told the Tucson Citizen Morgan was planning to expand his business. His financial position had never been better. Why would he want to kill himself? Charles planned to expand statewide from an escrow business to a title company, but he was short on cash because his assets were tied up in that transition. Ruth allegedly asked a close friend for a $2,500 loan during Charles's second disappearance. She didn't have any money to pay for living expenses. This friend couldn't give her $2,500, but gave her $400.
And this seems strange because the fact that this unidentified woman was telling authorities that Charles had $60,000 cash
to allegedly pay off his hitman. Ron Newman, Charles's attorney, told the Tucson Citizen that Banco was involved in a state banking department investigation. Morgan testified as part of this investigation on May 11th, but his testimony was limited and peripheral to the overall investigation and didn't concern the internal workings of Banco. Ruth told the Tucson Citizen that she didn't think Charles went into hiding at the motel while he was missing, and she didn't believe he was visited by the woman who was his quote-unquote social friend. She said she didn't think Charles was cheating on her with the mysterious woman, adding that a woman knows when her man is straying, and my husband was not straying. She said Charles was home most evenings unless he was at a lodge meeting. Well, and I'll say to that, most people don't want to believe that they're being cheated on.
Of course not. And women do have this intuition.
Wow, that sounds like you're really speaking from experience.
No, not about that. I'm just saying women in general.
And have a general intuition?
Yeah.
Okay, so not specifically about the straying part.
Oh, no.
Okay, because that sounded very specific.
You know.
Ruth also denied that Charles had a nervous breakdown because he was exhausted from work and that he had been forced to take a week off. Ruth said that he only missed work due to asthma attacks, and he had never visited a psychiatrist. The state attorney general agreed to give the sheriff's office Charles's secret testimony to aid their investigation of land fraud. According to the sheriff, they had investigated several land fraud cases in Pima County and other Arizona counties. They didn't know if Charles's testimony would be helpful or if there was any connection to his case. Most of his testimony concerned local attorney David Calley and real estate trust handled by Western Title Insurance. David Calley was a former director of Banco Internacional. He was also Michael Farley's attorney.
Oh, the guy that helped Charles out with the bond, the $50,000 bond.
Yeah, the Northwestern Mutual Life agent. And David Calley was the beneficiary of at least one Western title trust. This remained secret until the state legislature forced the company to make disclosures in the summer of 1976. Charles Morgan was subpoenaed to answer questions by the banking department and the AG's office. So this was his testimony that he gave on May 11th that we've already talked about. In December of 1976, Calley and two others purchased stock in Banco Internacional with the intent to gain a controlling interest. They were appointed to the board of directors, but after the FDIC launched an investigation and filed a lawsuit alleging improper loans, Calley and the others resigned from the board. The FDIC questioned 3 loans made to Henry Retz Jr., Fernando Campos, and Timothy Puntney to finance the purchase of land owned by Cali and sold through a trust controlled by a man named Robert Sudeth. The local federal court ordered the bank to cancel the loans, and the case was closed. Cali refused to comment on the investigation, but did say he had known Charles Morgan for 4 or 5 years and had seen him in the weeks before his death. He said he last spoke to Charles after his interview with state banking officials. He said Morgan didn't provide any details about his meeting, but Cali also said that whatever the state investigation was about, he didn't think it had anything to do with a lawsuit brought against him by a client. The FBI announced they were investigating Charles's death on June 23rd, 1977. The FBI worked on the case because Charles was found on a federal reservation. The sheriff's department subpoenaed Charles' bank records. Sheriff's Detective Ronald Oakes told the Tucson Citizen that on June 27th, 1977, the FBI was investigating Banco Internacional. The state banking department had already been investigating them for months. The Citizen reported that 3 other Banco officials testified in the state investigation: Paul Rees Jr., Nathan Schiff, and David Cali. So we know Charles borrowed the $30,000 on February 11th, 1977. Cali represented Morgan in this transaction. We mentioned it. Charles used his house as collateral for the loan. The state banking department delayed the transfer of ownership for over 3 months until Charles agreed to cooperate in their investigation. And then about a week after he testified, he was approved as a majority stockholder in Statewide. On July 8th, 1977, the AG's office filed a suit stating that David Cali's attempt to take over Banco was part of a fraudulent scheme. The civil suit alleged that securities were misrepresented. In violation of the State Securities Act, Charles Morgan testified as part of the investigation that led to this suit. According to the Arizona Daily Star, the complaint charges that Cali embarked on a fraudulent scheme to take control of Banco in order to obtain financing for the purchase of John Wayne Ranch, so that Cali would get a $2.4 million finder's fee. All right, that is a boatload of money in 1977.
Sure is.
$2.4 million. It also charged that Cali misappropriated the bank's assets for his personal benefit. The Tucson Citizen reported that the suit charged that Cali had been allowed to purchase 30,000 shares of Banco preferred stock after falsely claiming to represent interests that would pump up to $2 million in new capital into the bank. According to the state suit, Cali was able to complete the $360,000 purchase by using checks drawn on a title account at Western Title. Allegedly, he was given a $36,000 check when the account contained only $7,000 and received a $360,000 check when the account contained only $10,000.
Seems to be some things wrong with the math there.
There is. But what's important to this case is that it's been said the man who allegedly turned the checks over to Cali was Charles Morgan. Cali was also accused of receiving $5,600 in kickbacks on loans, $600 of which allegedly came from Charles Morgan. The Attorney General's office reached out-of-court settlements with 2 of the 3 defendants on August 29th, 1977. David Cali and Western Title Insurance Agency. Western agreed to refrain from illegal activities and to pay the state $500. Cali agreed to repay $2,600 of the $5,600 he received in kickbacks. And then on August 30th of that year, the suit was dismissed by Superior Court Judge Lillian Fisher. Wow, that's a heck of a settlement. Hey, you refrain from illegal activities, which you're supposed to do anyway.
Right.
You should always be refraining from illegal activities.
Right.
and pay the state $500. Where is the deterrence there?
It doesn't seem like there is any.
And then Callie only has to pay $2,600 of the $5,600 in illegal kickbacks.
We don't want it all back. We just want some of it back.
You know, you would think give it all. And on top of that, we're going to levy this huge fine.
Yeah.
To, make an example out. Where's the example? No wonder everybody's running around trying to commit fraud.
Yeah. There's no
downside.
Accountability.
What's the downside here? On August 10th, 1977, the sheriff's department ended their investigation into the death of Charles Morgan, stating that the evidence led them to believe he died of suicide and was not murdered. Sergeant Joe Jett said, "We have found no evidence that anyone took part in the death but himself." Charles's cause of death is still classified as unknown because there was no proof that Charles held the gun that killed him. It was eventually determined that the bullet came from the .357 Magnum revolver found near his body. Gunshot residue was found on his hand, but there were no fingerprints on the gun.
But when they say gunshot residue was found on his hands, they also mentioned that they potentially could have been target shooting.
Yeah, which would result in gunshot residue on your hands for sure. But they also said that all the fingerprints and footprints at the scene were Charles's.
Well, is that because a professional hitman wouldn't know how to remove their footprints, maybe fingerprints on the scene?
Well, a professional wouldn't leave any fingerprints. I'm assuming they would wear gloves.
Exactly.
Now, footprints is a different story, but yeah, you can cover them up.
Yeah.
I'm assuming. The police believe Charles may have killed himself because of financial problems and worry about the state investigation. Sheriff's investigators found that Charles only had cash assets of $400 and was over $40,000 in debt. That's not what you want your balance to look like.
No.
Your capital versus debt ratio is not looking good.
Not looking good at all.
And Charles had 2 life insurance policies. One would give money to his family no matter how he died. The other would not pay the family if his death was classified as suicide. I'm wondering, Gibbs, how many policies are issued today with that type of clause? We pay out no matter how you die.
I don't think too many.
And I would think they'd be very, very expensive.
Yes.
If they're even offered. Now, it is important to note that there's really no evidence that the people involved in the financial investigation had anything to do with Charles's death. The police have never accused them of any crimes relating to Charles's death, and they were never named as suspects. Now, we've talked a lot about them. Newspapers reported extensively on the financial investigation because of the close timing to the death of Charles Morgan. Now, you could see why some people could float a theory that possibly involved some of these individuals, but from what I've read, from what we've talked about, I'm not sure what their motive really would have been. It didn't sound like Charles lowered the hammer on him, right? Said anything super incriminating.
Right.
And in the end, we talked about it. What'd they get?
Slap on the wrist.
Yeah. $500. And please refrain from all illegal activities.
Yeah.
I'm still not over that one.
My library book fine was greater than that.
Well, it's because you checked it out in 1961.
It's true.
At the age of 15. You're going to,
yeah.
Bookman's going to come after you at that point.
Yeah, that's right.
According to Tucson.com, Ruth Morgan died of cancer in 2006. Charles's daughters believe their dad was murdered to protect corrupt business people and politicians. It was said that he had a lot of information about local politicians and others in government roles that they might not want revealed, and he was killed to keep him quiet. But as we wrap up this episode, obviously there is still some mystery. There's questions surrounding the death of Charles Morgan, but there's really no proof of what, if any, role the financial investigation, the names written on the dollar bill, or the mysterious woman played in his death. And some of the stuff in here is fascinating, but I struggle with understanding what it all means.
Sure.
But I guess it makes sense because police have struggled with it too. They haven't been able to figure out if it means anything. I go back to the mafia or that angle.
If it's true that he did business with the mafia, maybe he got too close to some vital information, knew too much just about the overall organization.
Yeah, the inner workings. I mean, the one thing I will say, depending on who you're working with, a cartel, mafia, whatever type of organization it is, I don't know that it takes that much to get on their bad side. One wrong turn, you walk in and hear something you shouldn't have heard. I mean, there are a lot of things that, I think could happen for them to want you not to be around anymore.
Yeah.
But again, these are sources that talk to the paper saying that. We don't know for a fact that he was doing all this stuff. But if he was working with, platinum and gold bullion and billions of dollars of transactions, I would say there's a pretty high risk that things could go bad quickly.
And we know people have been killed for less.
Well, we don't know people. No. I don't know anyone that's been killed for less. I think during the research, we have uncovered or seen people that have been killed for far less than that.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, you're on the Mexico-U.S. border. You got the drug trade and then all this land fraud on top of it. So many options to choose from.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's probably 3 viable or potentially viable options in this case. Number one is he did, in fact, take his own life. Entirely plausible.
Sure.
Number 2, there was a hitman hired either, by a cartel or by somebody he was working with. Or 3, it involved, these people that he was working some of these financial things with, possible fraud and all of that.
I mean, he did own and wear a bulletproof vest. He did have multiple guns in his vehicle.
He was paranoid.
Sure. And he had that secret little way to open his door on the fender and all the zip ties he had too.
Yeah. I mean, what we talked about that was found in his car, I don't have an explanation for that. A person is paranoid. They're wearing a bulletproof vest. They've got a bunch of guns in their car, ammunition, knives, police scanners, all this stuff. You have to ask the question, why?
Yeah.
What are they paranoid of? And does it lend a little bit more credibility that maybe somebody was after him?
And I would say if I came home after being gone for 3 days and I tell my spouse that my neck has been painted with some type of chemical, I'm pretty sure if I was that close to death, I'd say, you know what? Arizona's really not for us. Let's get out of here and let's go somewhere where maybe they won't find us. I don't think I'd stay around in the same town.
If you thought a hitman was after you?
Yeah.
No. You know why? Because there's no country for old men. It always comes back to that.
Yeah.
All right. That is it for our episode on the death of Charles Morgan. We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hey, guys. So I just listened to the Unsolved podcast for the Phillip Island murders, and it was killing me because you guys were coming up with all of these, possibilities. But I was listening to the podcast, and I'm thinking, the husband, Ferguson, comes back that night, kills the wife, fighting with the wife because she probably said, I'm going to take the kids. You'll never see him again. You'll lose the farm. You get out of here. Go be with your girlfriend. So he gets mad, comes back. They keep fighting. He kills the wife. Then he thinks, wait a second, I just killed my wife. So 1, if somebody finds the body, I'm going to be the number 1 suspect. 2, if she disappears, again, I'm going to be the number 1 suspect. So he's like, I got to make it look like she disappeared on purpose. So why would she disappear on purpose? All right, if she killed the other lady. So the husband killed the wife, then panics, ditches her in the water somewhere, gives her some concrete shoes or whatever, Then he goes and kills the girlfriend, makes it look like the wife did it with the whole scarlet letter thing, and then the wife ran away. So anyway, just wondering what you guys thought about it. Bye.
Yeah, in that case, I don't know that anything's off the table. You know, there was a lot of strange stuff going on. It did seem to me that Fergus, and his name's Fergus, not Ferguson. She's lumping me in there.
I know.
As the husband. No, that guy was really in love with Beth.
Yes.
That's what I really got from the research. I think I could see a possibility where he found out that his wife killed Beth and was so enraged that he then killed his wife.
Right.
I don't know. I thought we talked about that,
did.
but I could see that as a possibility, but I'm not saying that other thing's not possible. It is.
Yeah. Never know.
I'm not sure why he would need to kill Beth other than, as she said, to make it look as though his wife had done it.
Right.
But I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was just listening to the podcast about the Beatrice or however you say that, 6, and taking confessions based on dreams, that's just insane. I've dreamed my ex-husband was the devil himself. Oh, never mind. That was probably the truth. But I think that's crazy. Just crazy. Love you both. Bye.
Love you too. But, I'll say my wife has dreamed on numerous occasions that I have done things, that were things that she didn't approve of. And I'm telling you what, the next morning she is ticked at me.
The next morning, I think it's carried over for about a week before.
Oh, it has before. It's carried on. I'm like, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
None of the stuff that you're talking, I might have done some other stuff, but I didn't do the stuff that you dreamt I did.
She gets mad at me because I didn't say anything. I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about, man.
You should have told me, Gibby, that he was out cheating on me. I'm glad she said Beatrice.
Yeah.
Because people probably don't know how hard it was for me to say Beatrice.
Very difficult.
And how many times I had to edit it or say it over again. Because you see that word and it's Beatrice.
Absolutely.
You want to say it that way, but obviously that's not how the city is pronounced.
Well, they say it differently.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. My name is Amanda. I'm from Maine. I was just calling in because I was listening to your most recent Unsolved podcast, the Beatrice 6. I was calling because somebody left a voicemail in reference to one of your past episodes that mentioned a guy named Peter Peterson, and she was saying that she had somebody in her class that was Steven, and it made me think, and I literally don't often think about this, but my aunt's name is Tracy, and it's spelled different. So, yeah, I just thought that was funny, and as I was listening to that, I had no clue that I had somebody in your life close to me that had 2 names, because it's just kind of common. I just hope you guys end up having a good rest of your summer. I love hearing you guys. I've caught up on both Unsolved and TCAT, and it breaks my heart because I don't really have anything else to listen to. I do have other podcasts that I like to listen to, but I prefer listening to you guys. So I'm Team Night, but hope you guys have a good rest of your summer.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, if you're not on Patreon, there's some additional content there for you.
Absolutely.
Her voicemail was a lot longer. I had to cut it down.
Yeah.
And one thing that struck me as funny, but I cut it out, was that she said her grandfather wanted them to name her Tracy.
Really?
Yeah. The middle name Tracy as well. All 3 spelled differently.
That'd be different, wouldn't it?
It would be.
Remember our buddy Michael Michelson?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Not sure where that came from, but all right.
Just threw it out there.
I am actually getting a lot of people saying that, examples of these names, and obviously they're a lot more common than I realized when I made the comment.
It's crazy.
All right, buddy. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So from Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
this month, stream the funniest films for free on Pluto TV. Watch comedy classics like Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, and Mean Girls. Or drop in for a Tyler Perry marathon with a Medea family funeral and Medea's witness protection. Pluto TV also has hundreds of channels and thousands of movies and TV shows like Get Shorty, Be Cool, Key and Peele, Comedy in Color, and more. And no contracts, no subscriptions, no fees. No joke. So download the Pluto TV app on your favorite streaming device and start laughing today. Pluto TV. Drop in, watch free.